Welcome to today's custom deep dive. And our mission for you today is to explore a truly massive and frankly kind of bizarre turning point in culinary history.
It really is wild. We're looking at this leap from, the incredibly harsh, crude spirits of the medieval and Renaissance eras straight into these highly sophisticated liqueurs of the early 1700s.
Right. And to do this, we are pulling from a really fascinating source. It's a manual published in the year 1700 called La Maison Reglée, which roughly translates to the regulated household.
Yeah, written by a man known to history simply as Auditor.
Just Auditor,
Yeah.
like a pop star. But I have to tease some of the stuff we're going to get into because it is out there.
Oh, for sure.
We're talking about why the absolute elite of Europe were drinking, ground up animal musk,
Mhm.
and why this master mixologist was literally burying his finest creations in hot manure.
It sounds completely crazy to us now, but this text is an absolute goldmine because it captures a very specific moment in time.
Yeah.
Auditor is basically handing us the blueprints for how European high society completely transformed its palate, moving away from these rough burning alcohols into an era of liquid artistry.
Which really laid the foundation for like every craft cocktail you enjoy today.
Exactly.
Because when you walk into a really high-end modern craft cocktail bar today, you expect a certain level of clinical precision.
Yeah, the bartender's usually using like glass eyedroppers measuring things to the exact milliliter.
Right, maybe using little tweezers to place a single pristine leaf on a perfectly clear ice cube.
It looks way more like a sterilized chemistry lab than a traditional tavern.
But then you look back at the origins of this luxury mixology through Audiger's eyes, and suddenly that pristine, sterilized lab just entirely vanishes.
Gone.
Instead, you are thrust into a world where the absolute greatest bartender in Europe is burying his drinks in a barrel of hot animal waste and carefully shaving animal musk into your glass.
It really represents the absolute culinary Wild West. But, I mean, it's a Wild West with royal stakes.
Yeah, Audiger wasn't just some disconnected theorist writing from a desk somewhere.
No, not at all. He was, for all intents and purposes, a 17th century celebrity caterer.
Yeah.
He explicitly writes that he had 35 years of experience serving the king, the queen, and various European royals.
So if you needed to impress the most powerful people on the continent, Audiger was the guy you called.
He was the guy.
And he definitely knows how to drop a humble brag, too. There is this one incredibly specific anecdote in the text where he talks about catering this massive garden party at Juvisy for the king.
Right, this was right after the royal court took a trip to Fontainebleau.
Yeah. And Audiger just casually mentions that he personally made all the fruit displays and all the liqueurs. He describes serving the king and queen, carrying what he calls collations through the garden alleys.
And just for anyone wondering, a collation back then wasn't just like a quick snack.
Oh, no.
It was a highly elegant, luxurious light meal or refreshment, usually served outdoors during these lavish events. It was meant to be this huge sensory delight.
Right, and he boasts that he impressed the royals so much they actually joked that the garden itself was just naturally sprouting these collations everywhere they walked.
Which just paints such a wonderful image of 18th century royal excess.
Seriously.
But looking at the broader historical context, we really have to ask ourselves why a master of his craft is writing all of his highly guarded trade secrets down in 1700.
Right, because usually they keep that stuff locked up.
Exactly. But he actually tells us in the text, his family simply didn't want to take up his profession.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they had no interest in the family business. So, facing the prospect of his life's work just vanishing entirely, he published his methods so they wouldn't be lost to history.
That is, I mean, it reminds me of a modern-day Michelin-starred chef just dropping their ultimate unfiltered recipe book to prove they're the absolute best in the game right before they retire.
Which is a perfect comparison, especially when you consider what he was actually working with. Because at this time, raw spirits, what Audiger refers to as spirit of wine, were incredibly rough.
Like, essentially harsh, unrefined moonshine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You couldn't just serve that to the King of France. They needed an absolute master to tame those aggressive liquids into something sophisticated.
And that brings up a massive logistical hurdle. To make these royal drinks, Audiger couldn't just, mix ingredients he bought at a luxury grocery store. He had to literally build the building blocks of flavor and texture from scratch. You can't just dump harsh alcohol into raw sugar and expect a miracle.
No, you really have to refine the base elements first.
And his method for clarifying sugar is intense.
It is, because if you are serving a luxury liqueur to royalty, It cannot just taste good. It has to look beautiful in the glass. It must be perfectly clear.
And 17th century sugar was anything but clear.
Oh, it was awful. It was full of ash, doot, and impurities from the refining and shipping process.
So to fix that, Odegaard takes 6 pounds of sugar, mixes it with water, and then, get this, he adds a cold whisked egg white.
Which sounds weird.
It really does. He puts this whole mixture on the fire to boil, and as it inevitably bubbles up and threatens to boil over, he constantly extinguishes it by aggressively splashing cold water onto it.
Which is actually a brilliant piece of early food science.
Okay, break that down for me.
Well, the egg white is basically acting as a natural coagulant. As the syrup heats up, the proteins in that egg white denature and unfold, forming this microscopic mesh.
Okay.
And that mesh floats to the top, trapping all the dirt, ash, and particulate matter that was hiding in the sugar. So that creates a thick scum on the surface, which you can simply skim off.
So the egg white is basically a culinary vacuum cleaner pulling out the dirt.
Pretty much, yeah.
But why the constant splashing of cold water? Like, what does that do?
That is all about temperature control. By flashing the syrup with cold water, he prevents the sugar from caramelizing or candying.
Ah, okay.
Because if sugar candies, it completely alters the flavor profile, making it heavy and burnt, and it creates this cloudy haze in the final drink. So through this painstaking process of boiling, skimming, and splashing, he is meticulously engineering a perfectly clear, pure, neutral sweet syrup.
Wow. And once he has his perfect crystal clear sugar, he needs to build his flavor extracts. And this is where his methods for pulling essences out of spices get completely wild.
They really do.
He would take spices like cinnamon or clove and steep them in that rough spirit of wine. And if he was doing this in the summer, he'd leave the tightly corked bottles out in the hot sun or buried in warm sand for like 6 weeks to 2 months.
Which makes perfect sense from a chemical standpoint.
Oh, totally.
A long, slow, warm infusion is the best way to coax those volatile essential oils out of the hard spices and into the alcohol without destroying their delicate aromatic compounds.
The summer method is totally logical, but nature doesn't always cooperate. If it was winter, Odegaard couldn't just use the sun.
No.
Instead, he explicitly advises burying the glass bottles of alcohol in a literal barrel of hot horse manure. I mean, imagine you were a guest at a royal palace, sipping the finest liquor in the world, and the bartender tells you it just spent 2 months buried in animal waste.
To a modern listener accustomed to sterile kitchens, it sounds completely unsanitary and deeply unappetizing.
Deeply.
But there is brilliant, undeniable science behind this 1700s madness. Consider the technological limitations of the era. Before we had modern temperature control, no electric hot plates, no precise convection ovens, no thermal immersion circulators. How on earth do you keep a delicate liquid perfectly consistently warm for 2 straight months during a freezing European winter?
Right, because you certainly can't just leave it over a wood fire for 8 weeks. It would boil away or catch fire.
Precisely. But a pile of composting organic manure generates its own heat through microbial breakdown.
Oh, wow.
It provides a highly consistent, incredibly gentle, and sustained thermal environment. Odegaard's using the manure almost exactly like a primitive slow cooker or a modern sous vide machine.
That is so smart.
It gently warms the alcohol, opening up the spices to release their oils, without ever getting hot enough to boil off the alcohol itself. The glass bottle protects the liquid from contamination, while the manure provides the perfect, free energy source.
So he is basically using the natural heat of biological decomposition as a 17th century sous vide. It is genius, even if it makes you flinch a little bit.
Yeah, just a little.
Armed with that perfectly clear sugar and those highly potent manure-warmed spice extracts, Odegaard was finally ready to assemble the crown jewels of 18th century liqueurs.
And the pinnacle of this era was a drink known as the Rossoly.
The Rossoly.
Yes. This was the ultimate elite beverage, a real status symbol in a glass.
And the construction of the Rossoly is fascinating because of how methodical it is. He takes his clarified sugar, adds those painstakingly extracted essences of anise and cinnamon, mixes it with the spirit of wine, and then he drops in a literal pinch of musk and amber.
Right.
But before any of those luxury ingredients touch each other, he starts with water. And he has a very strict rule about this water.
Odegaard insists, unequivocally, that the water must be boiled first to remove what he terms corruption.
And he is so serious about this that he actually uses it to throw shade at a rival drink.
He really does.
He mentions a beverage called the Populo of Marseille. He describes the Populo as a lighter, somewhat sweeter knockoff of his Rossoly. But he specifically calls out the makers down in Marseille, noting that their version rots, goes cloudy, and spoils very quickly.
And why?
Because they lazily use cold, raw water instead of taking the time to boil it first.
Which demonstrates a profound, intuitive understanding of preservation well before germ theory was even established.
Right.
By boiling the water, Oettinger is sterilizing it. He is killing the natural bacteria and microbes that would otherwise feed on the sugars and cause the delicate floral and spice infusions to ferment or go rancid.
That makes so much sense.
He is effectively extending the shelf life of this extreme luxury product from a few mere weeks to several years.
Honestly, my absolute favorite variant of the Rossoly that he outlines is something called the Frangipane.
Oh, the Frangipane?
Yeah, this is a complex mixture of fruits, flowers, and aromatic odors all brought together. But Oettinger doesn't just hand over a recipe with measurements. He provides a strict governing philosophy for how this drink must taste.
He states that for a true Frangipane, nothing should dominate. The entire secret to its identity is the absolute equality of taste.
The absolute equality of taste, it is such a beautiful standard. It makes me think of like a modern audio engineer perfectly mixing a track in a recording studio.
Oh, I like that.
Like if you're listening to a new song and the bass is turned up way too loud or the lead vocals are piercing your ears, it ruins the whole track. Your brain just focuses on the mistakes.
You're right.
But when that audio engineer balances the levels perfectly, you stop hearing the individual instruments entirely. The drums, the bass, and the guitars all melt together into a beautiful, singular new piece of music. That is exactly what Oettinger is demanding of the flavors in the Frangipane.
That is a phenomenal way to understand his goal. He is creating a unified, elevated sensory experience. If you taste cinnamon, he failed. If you taste strong floral notes, he failed.
Wow.
It is not a spice drink or a flower drink. It is Frangipane. It becomes a totally new, singular flavor profile born entirely out of flawless mathematical balance.
Frangipane was clearly all about this delicate, ethereal harmony, but achieving that harmony sometimes required ingredients that, to our modern sensibilities, seem incredibly heavy, earthy, and borderline bizarre.
Very true.
Which brings us back to that pinch of musk and amber he dropped into the base Rossoly.
This is perhaps the sharpest divergence between the culinary world of 1700 and our own.
Yeah, let's look closely at Oettinger's luxury perfume preparation because it reads like an alchemist's diary. He takes 4 grains of amber and 2 grains of musk. And we should probably clarify what those actually are because they sound like precious stones you'd find in a jewelry shop.
They are definitely precious, but they are absolutely not stones. Amber, in this context, refers to ambergris. This is essentially a waxy, highly aromatic substance produced in the digestive system of sperm whales.
Wow.
It's usually found floating in the ocean or washed up on beaches. Musk, on the other hand, is a deeply pungent, glandular secretion harvested from the musk deer.
So we have whale digestive output and deer gland secretions.
Yep.
Oettinger takes these, along with an egg-sized lump of sugar. He puts them all into a mortar and violently pulverizes them until the mixture becomes a fine integrated flour.
Right.
Then he carefully wraps this incredibly potent powder in multiple layers of paper. And he claims this specific preparation could last for 10 years without losing its power. And just a tiny pinch on the tip of a knife was enough to flavor 4 to 5 entire pints of liqueur.
The role these animal byproducts played in historical gastronomy is truly wild to think about today. In our modern world, we associate musk and ambergris almost exclusively with the fragrance industry.
Right, like colognes.
Exactly. They are the backbone of high-end colognes and perfumes. But in Oettinger's era, these were the ultimate culinary status symbols. You serve them to prove your wealth.
But surely it wasn't just about showing off. Like, what did whale wax and deer glands actually do to the flavor of a drink?
They provided an incredible savory depth. They act as heavy, earthy base notes that anchor the highly volatile, sweet, and floral top notes of the liqueurs.
Ah, okay.
Without them, a sweet floral drink might taste thin or cloying. Furthermore, ambergris and musk act as chemical fixatives.
Meaning what?
They literally bind to the other aromatic compounds, helping those delicate cinnamon and floral flavors linger on the palate for much longer after you swallow.
It's just wild to imagine sipping a sweet floral liqueur at a garden party and getting a subtle, earthy hit of whale essence on the finish.
It's definitely an acquired taste.
But liqueurs weren't the only drinks getting this incredibly complex, heavy-handed treatment. Oettinger also dedicates a massive section of his manual to spiced wines, specifically a widely consumed drink called Hypocras.
Hypocras was an absolute staple of aristocratic entertaining. It was deeply woven into the fabric of winter banquets and formal events.
And his recipe for it is aggressively intense. You start with a good base wine. He suggests a heavy Spanish wine, a sweet muscat, or even champagne.
Okay.
Then you hammer it with flavor. You add cinnamon, cloves, mace, white pepper, long pepper, coriander, and surprisingly, half a sliced rennet apple. It sounds like a hyper-aggressive, incredibly acidic mulled wine.
It would have been deeply spiced,
Yeah.
very high in acid, and packed with harsh, astringent tannins from both the wine and the sheer volume of raw spices.
Which makes his clarification process for this drink the most shocking detail in the entire manual.
Oh, yeah.
Oettinger gets to the final step of preparing this highly acidic, heavily spiced wine, and he instructs the reader to use half a demiseptia of milk.
Milk.
Yes. Now, just so we have our bearings, a demiseptia is an old French measurement, roughly equivalent to half a pint, or about a standard modern cup. So he is taking a cup of milk, or sometimes crushed sweet almonds, and mixing it directly into this vat of acidic spiced wine. Then he pours the whole mess through a conical filter bag, which he calls a chasse. My immediate thought reading this was, doesn't adding milk to a giant bowl of acid just instantly curdle the milk? How does a bunch of gross floating milk curds create a perfectly clear luxury beverage?
Well, it absolutely does curdle the milk.
Yeah.
Almost violently.
Yeah.
And that is the entire point.
Wait, really?
Yes. This is a brilliant chemical technique known today as milk washing. Interestingly, modern craft bartenders are only just now rediscovering this and putting it on modern menus. When you add milk to a highly acidic liquid, the milk proteins, specifically the casein, denature and rapidly clump together, forming those visible curds.
So he is intentionally ruining the milk.
He is harnessing it. As those curds form and float through the liquid, they act like a microscopic biological dragnet.
Oh, wow.
Casein proteins are incredibly sticky. They bind directly to the harsh, astringent tannins from the wine and the woodsy spices. They also grab onto any cloudy, suspended flavor particles floating in the vat. When Oettinger pours that entire curdled mixture through his filter bag, the curds get caught in the cloth and quickly form a dense secondary filter of their own.
A biological filter made of milk curds.
Exactly that. The liquid that slowly drips through that dense layer of curds is completely stripped of its rough edges, its bitter tannins, and its visual cloudiness.
That's amazing.
It results in a brilliantly clear, incredibly smooth, and highly refined spiced wine. It retains all the complex aromatic flavors of the coriander and cloves, but with absolutely none of the harsh, acidic bite. It is a masterpiece of 17th century food chemistry.
The man was an absolute wizard. He is using composting manure as a thermal sous vide and coagulated milk curds as a microscopic biological filter.
He really was ahead of his time.
But as you read further into Oettinger's manual, you start to witness a major cultural shift happening in real time. European society was changing. The heavy, musky, aggressively spiced winter warmers like Hypocras were perfect for drafty medieval castles. But as we move into the 1700s, palates are expanding. Aristocratic socializing is moving outdoors into sunlit, manicured gardens.
Oh, definitely.
Suddenly, there's a massive demand for bright, fresh, fruit-forward refreshments that won't weigh you down.
We are witnessing the dawn of the modern refreshing beverage industry. The culture was craving brightness and acidity over heavy spice and musk.
Oettinger recognized this shift and was right there to supply the demand. He completely rethought his ingredients. Let's look at a drink he calls Rataphia.
Rataphia.
Yeah, this was a vibrant fruit liqueur. He took freshly crushed cherries, raspberries, and red currants and mixed them with his tame spirit of wine and that perfectly clarified sugar.
Okay, sounds good.
But to give it complexity, to get that really distinct noyau or pit flavor, he didn't just toss in a handful of cherry pits. He specifically crushed up 4 to 5 entire pounds of cherry pits and another pound or 2 of apricot pits. And he explicitly notes to leave the skins of the fruit on those pits. See, he is taking the concept of balance and applying it to fruit. The flesh of the berries gives you the bright, sweet, acidic high notes that the Enlightenment-era palate was craving.
Right.
But by aggressively crushing pounds of pits and intentionally leaving the skins attached, he is extracting deep, bitter, almost almond-like tannins from the kernels and the skins. This gives the Rataphia a profound, bitter depth. It completely prevents the drink from just tasting like, alcoholic fruit jam.
It is that constant pursuit of the Frangipane philosophy, perfect balance, preventing the sweetness from dominating.
Exactly.
And for those royal guests who wanted something even lighter, perhaps without the heavy alcoholic kick entirely, he had a whole menu of delicate options.
Ooh, yeah.
He outlines eau claret, which was only steeped for a very brief 2 to 3 days to achieve just a whisper of flavor. And then there is his eau de graisse, or red currant water.
The eau de graisse is a perfect study in culinary restraint. It is astonishingly simple, just water, freshly crushed red currants, and sugar. But the genius is in what he doesn't add. Oettinger explicitly notes in the recipe that for this specific drink, you do not need to squeeze any lemon into it.
Which shows a deeply sophisticated, almost modern understanding of balancing natural acids and sugars. A lesser cook would just habitually add lemon to everything for tartness.
For sure.
But Oettinger understands the chemical makeup of his raw ingredients. He knows that red currants are inherently packed with their own sharp, natural malic and citric acids. They're already perfectly tart. He knows exactly when an ingredient needs a boost and when it needs to be completely left alone to shine on its own merits.
He also highlights a restorative drink called orgeat, which is the direct ancestor of the orgeat syrup we put in tropical tiki drinks today.
Oh, I love orgeat.
Right, but his 1700s recipe isn't just a basic almond syrup. He makes it with a blend of sweet and bitter almonds, but then he adds a full ounce of crushed melon seeds. He turns this into a milky, rich, deeply hydrating paste that you vigorously mix with cold water.
Imagine sipping that in a sun-drenched royal garden. It provides hydration, natural fats from the nuts, and subtle sweetness. It was the ultimate refreshing summer thirst quencher.
When you look at this entire later section of his manual, the bright fruit-infused Rataphia with its bitter pit tannins, the delicate whisper of eau claret, the perfectly tart red currant water, and the milky, hydrating orgeat, it honestly looks exactly like a modern summer patio menu.
It really does.
It is identical to looking at a chalkboard list of modern craft hard seltzers, fruit spritzes, and artisanal lemonades. We love to think we invented the concept of the refreshing summer patio drink, but Oettinger was engineering it perfectly for the King of France over 300 years ago.
He truly was laying the intellectual and chemical groundwork for the entire modern beverage industry. He looked at raw, aggressive, unrefined components, harsh spirits, dirty sugar, bitter pits, and proved that through an understanding of chemistry, immense patience, and a relentlessly demanding palate, you could create absolute liquid art.
As we wrap up this deep dive, it is genuinely incredible to look back at the journey we've taken through Oettinger's notes. We have traced the evolution from a harsh, burning spirit of wine, tamed by a master who wasn't afraid to bury his life's work in a barrel of hot horse manure.
A true pioneer.
We have seen the philosophical pursuit of the absolute equality of taste in the perfectly balanced Frangipane. We have unpacked the bizarre but undeniably brilliant biology of the milk-washed Hypocras, and we've tasted the extreme luxury of an amber-dusted Rossoly.
It stands as a brilliant testament to human ingenuity. It shows our endless, unyielding pursuit of sensory pleasure and refinement, no matter what raw materials we are handed.
It really does. So, to you listening right now, the next time you sit down at a nice bar and enjoy a perfectly clear, balanced craft cocktail, or you sip a bitter almond liqueur after dinner, or honestly, even if you just enjoy a perfectly tart glass of lemonade on a hot summer afternoon, take a second to remember that you are benefiting from centuries of trial, error, and meticulous chemical craft by unsung culinary heroes like Oettinger.
And we want to leave you with one final thought to ponder today. Think back to that opening image of the Rossoly. In the 1700s, painstakingly grinding up the digestive secretions of a sperm whale and the glandular output of a musk deer was considered the absolute, undisputed pinnacle of beverage luxury.
Yeah.
It was literally what you served to prove your worth to a king. It begs a fascinating question. What incredibly rare, highly sought after, or perhaps entirely bizarre ingredient are we proudly using in our fine dining and craft cocktails today that people 300 years from now will look back on with total, utter bewilderment?
That is definitely something to chew on or sip on the next time you find yourself sitting in one of those pristine lab-like cocktail bars. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.